Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Highbury Squad for another episode of Get Off The Pottsy. As ever, I'm your host, Dan Potts, and I thought I'd bring somebody different on. I've been with Kev, I've been with Sophie, I've been with Lee, so I, of course, brought on fan of the show, Tom Canton from the Gonna Talk TV. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, doing very good, mate. Very good. How about yourself?
I'm
I
very
hear
well,
that you
mate.
had a late night last night. Is the truth?
I did have a late night, mate, and it was, do you know what? It was great to see you actually and have a beer with you. And you come and met me and my dad and had a beer, and it was nice to actually. You don't really get to have a beer and drink sometimes, do you? You're doing so busy and stuff, and I thought that was nice. But good to see you, mate, and thank you for joining me today for your debut on this this show, not the channel, but the show. This is something that Sophie and Kev have allowed me to do, and it's just a little bit something different in terms of content. And I thought what we'd do, instead of talking about Arteta in, Arteta out, Kroenke in, Kroenke out, we like to do something which we call reminiscing, mate. And this is going to be the top 5 underrated players ever at the Arsenal. So I thought that I'd get you on and we would discuss it, debate it. And of course, we're going to miss people out. And what I love about this is we've done the 5 top players, the 5 top goals. And actually, I wanted to talk about maybe some of the players that we have maybe underrated over the years. Me and Kev also did the 5 top signings of Arsenal, and we always end up missing people. We always end up thinking, how can you just pick 5? Sometimes it's hard to pick 10 or even 20 in some cases, or particularly with players. It's very difficult at times. But we have gone for the top 5 underrated players. Tom, how difficult was this for you, mate?
Yeah, it only got difficult when we had a little chat off air kind of about all the different people you could pick. And then you realize, like, oh no, like I've missed out all these people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, especially, I know there's a lot of fans that are younger than me, but I'm still would class myself as one of the younger parts of the Arsenal fan base. And so there'll be people that have witnessed a lot more. However, that being said, I have still done some of these picks from, previous generations, players that are around before I was around. And, I always kind of feel like it's a bit of a responsibility as an Arsenal fan to go back and kind of you learn your history and learn about the players that were there before you supported Arsenal. And I've certainly done that with a couple of the players in my group. So yeah, it was tricky, but there are some people that I like talking about football, and I like talking about these specific footballers. So I'm looking forward to this for sure.
Yeah, man, likewise. I went through it, and do you know what was funny was I actually said to you, listen, we've got to discuss this, and you sent me 5 of the most underrated players that are currently in the Arsenal squad. I was like, no, Tom, we're talking about all time. So, and do you know what was quite impressive was you actually sent that to me pretty quickly, mate. So I was like, wow, he is that. Well, I was quite impressed, mate. I can't lie. So let's get into this, mate, because I want this. This is going to be a good discussion. So I'm going to start with you.
Me, I'm hugely
order.
underrated, Dan. I'm massively
Do
underrated.
you know what? I would agree. Of course, I would agree, Tom. Of course, I would agree. Of course, I would, mate. We're gonna go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's start with who we've both put at number 5. Starting with yourself, who have you gone for? Arsenal's 5th most underrated player, in your opinion, mate?
Yeah, I put Olivier Giroud as my number 5. I know that he probably pops up on a lot of people's lists. I wouldn't say I like the guy anymore, to be fair, after his antics at Chelsea. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely spot on. There's reasons why I don't particularly like him anymore. Not just because of jealousy around how good looking he is either, but he's a character. He was someone that scored a lot of goals for Arsenal, and I think maybe goes under the radar as one of the bargains of Arsenal's history. 12 million quid, I think he cost, and to get over 100-goal return from a striker like that is always going to be strong. He scored, as we can see on the screen, a plethora of ridiculous goals, just overhead kicks, scorpion kicks, long range strikes. Sometimes goals that had absolutely no business being that good in games that meant nothing. I remember the goal he scored against Man United at home in a game that was already done and dusted. And then right at the end, he came on and popped up with an absolute banger that went in the top left-hand corner. I was at his first ever game, and that was my first ever Arsenal game, which is, I don't know if it's slightly embarrassing to admit that I didn't get to my first Arsenal game until I was about 17, but I just didn't get to it when I was younger because of the amount that games cost. So it took me until 17 to actually go, and it was against Coventry when he scored his first goal after a fair few games where he hadn't yet scored. He'd been playing against, like, if you remember, we beat Liverpool 2-0 at Anfield. Podolski and Cazorla scored, and Giroud was getting a bit of pressure by this point, but he came in and he chipped the keeper, and I just put him down as someone that never really got the appreciation at his time at Arsenal that he probably deserved, considering how many goals he did score.
Do you know what I hate is the fact that I feel so old. My first game was 1994 when I was a youngster.
Wow,
and,
that's when I was born, Dan.
I don't like this. I am only 34, to be honest. I know.
I'm only 7 years older than me. That probably tells you how long it took for me to get to my first game, to be fair.
Wow. No, and you know what? I feel for you because it is like that. And it's not nothing to be embarrassed about at all because it's very expensive to go to football games now. And at a young age, it really is. So no dramas there. Listen, we don't normally do this, but Giroud actually made my top 5 as well. But I put him in at number 3. Look at that. That is a fantastic picture, isn't it? Bless him, Arsene. I thought Olivier Giroud was one of the most underrated footballers that Arsenal have had, and he definitely 100% made my top 5. And what I like about Olivier Giroud is not the fact that he scored goals and that he was, went on to win. Let's be honest, he actually won the Champions League, the Europa League, and the World Cup when he left Arsenal. So he's won some of the best competitions around. However, the FA Cup wins he won with us and the goals that he scored were great. But what I loved and appreciated about Olivier Giroud was he used his attributes to the best of his ability to win the amount of trophies in games that he did and score the goals that he did. I think he's only second behind Thierry Henry in terms of the French all-time goal scorer as well. So
does he not?
Has he overtaken now?
I feel like he's overtaken.
You might even be right. So I stand corrected if that is the case. But I do feel like he is sometimes overlooked, and people used to get frustrated with him. And I kind of understood that. Thought people were a little bit harsh at times on him, calling him a lamppost and saying that his lack of movement, and we saw more movement in Madame Tussauds. All those kind of things I was hearing, and I thought, I get it, but actually the guy is always, in my opinion, could have had the potential to be used more as a 4-4-2 centre forward. And I don't really know why we didn't, like you mentioned a couple of players there. I don't know why we really didn't see the best of him alongside Theo Walcott or Lucas Podolski, because I thought that although Walcott and Podolski were always a lot more wider and used in width-wise with Giroud, I kind of felt like we needed a 4-4-2 situation there. And Olivier Giroud, for me, is probably one of the best flick-on headers, hold-up players that you're going to see. A man mountain. And that scorpion kick has got to go down as one of the best goals I've ever seen at the Emirates in terms of individual quality. So I totally get why he is in the mix, and people do talk about him as being underrated. And I had a chat with Craig the other day from Same Old Arsenal, and he was like, no, awful player, hated him, didn't understand why anybody wanted him. And I said, hang on, Craig, this is a bit harsh. He's still banging in goals for AC Milan. I don't care. And then as we were talking about it, Olivier Giroud popped up with 2 goals for AC Milan. And I just said, I'll just leave this here. And I do think he sometimes is spoken a little bit disrespectfully, if I'm honest, because I think the guy was a real good player for us. And I think that when we did let him go, obviously Aubameyang and Lacazette came in, so we didn't really miss him. But I felt like we did kind of miss him in a way of a different dimension striker and someone to bring on. So I can see totally why he makes your number 5. Tom, we're going to move on to my number 5. And some people might sit there and laugh at this one and think, what? This guy was great and everyone loved him. Everybody loved him. I absolutely loved him as well. But I thought he was a lot better than people give him credit for. And maybe it's because he came around the same time as the Anelkas, the Henrys, the Bergkamps. And that was why perhaps he was overlooked. But I thought this guy at number 5 was one of the most underrated. And it is Kanu. I thought Kanu was so good at Arsenal. It was outstanding. I honestly believe some of the goals this guy scored. I remember the flick against Tottenham. I remember the hat-trick in, 10 minutes against Chelsea. I remember the flick from Dixon's and Parlour's bit of work down the right-hand side against Borough and him just flicking it in with one of the best, delicious little flicks you're ever going to see. This guy just scored unbelievable goals, and how skillful he was. I think people overlook how kind of maybe underrated this guy was at Arsenal. What's your thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, Kanu was a player that won a Champions League with Ajax, of course, before he joined Arsenal, which maybe doesn't get talked about enough either. He was always going to be that player that wasn't necessarily destined to be Arsenal's number 9 for the long term, because, as you say, he was a player pretty much appreciated as being underrated, and was always looked at as a player that was going to be a support kind of extra number 9 in the Arsenal squad. But you're 100% right, and what he gave to Arsenal and those moments that you brought up, the Chelsea one sticks in my mind above all else. That just to even attempt to have the guile to try and launch that into the net from that angle is just silly. It was silly, and that it's just an extreme moment of showing his technical skill, his vision of what he's capable of. But yeah, you're absolutely right to put him in your list, and he's not in mine, because I told you at the start of this show I forgot loads of people. So
but it's hard.
It is hard, yeah. But
it's hard just to pick 5, man. It really is. But we both need to stand corrected, because Benzema is the one that's taken over Thierry Henry.
Benzema's overtaken the club and country records, and Thierry Henry is 5 ahead of Giroud at the moment. But I mean, Giroud's still playing, so he could overtake him. So there you go.
It could still happen, because he's still getting picked, isn't he? At the age of 34, is he now? I don't even know what Giroud is, but I imagine he's got to be. So Deschamps is a big fan. So Kanu goes in for me. Tom, let's move to number 4. Who have you gone for next?
Number 4, I have gone for, this. What was so funny about doing this list is that it made me go back to remember some of my favourite players. And, Thomas Rosicky is who I've gone as my number 4 pick. The reason why I picked him, and maybe he's someone that maybe wouldn't pop up on many people's underrated lists. I always looked at him as someone whose obvious injuries held him back, and we was always never going to be the player. But he was always funny that we replaced the number 7 with Robert Pires, with another long-haired kind of player. It's as if it was like what you needed to have was long hair to have that. Thinking forwards, obviously it ended quite quickly, but I just loved that, again, some of the goals that Rosicky scored, how important he was, and how elusive he is in kind of how long he was at the club. Like, you kind of forget how long he was an Arsenal player. You see, like, the picture on the screen now that he was wearing that shirt. That's the season that Olivier Giroud first signed for Arsenal, that kit. And I was at the North London derby. By the way, he loved a goal in a North London derby, did Thomas Rosicky. That was what we know for sure. But I was at when we won the FA Cup in 2013, in the 2013-14 season. I was at the game where we beat Spurs in the 3rd round of the FA Cup, and he just nicks the ball off Danny Rose on the halfway line, just runs from there and just dinks it over Brad Friedel, I think it was, in goal. And these are just the types of deft touches and just what he would bring to the team. But he also scored a great goal in a North London derby. I think it's the last time we've won at Tottenham in the league. It was that goal in like the first minute. And he smashed a shot in from the right-hand side across the goalkeeper. Had no chance. And then we just held out for 90 minutes and kept the... And I just look at him as a technically brilliant and completely underrated player that, if he hadn't have had his injury issues, could arguably be one of the best attacking midfielders of our history.
He was one of my favourite players. And if I'm honest with you, if I was to pick my top 10 favourite Arsenal players, I think he'd get into it, Thomas Rosicky, because I think he was not only underrated, like you say, but he had the right mentality and the right attitude. And I think there was some rumours about off the pitch stuff in terms of maybe dabbling in some stuff that you shouldn't be. But listen, footballers do that occasionally, unfortunately. And I do believe that injuries did hold him back to what could have been an even better Arsenal career, and he was already fantastic at it. And I think that one thing you say, you liken him to Robert Pires for having long hair and wearing number 7. The other thing that Robert Pires and Rosicky did, as you rightly said, was score in the North London derby, and that is the last time we've beaten them, that first goal in that first minute. And I just loved everything about this player. I just thought that when we lost him, it was a real shame that we were losing him in a way that we thought, yeah, I think you could have done a bit more, Thomas, and it's a shame, because when players leave like that, it's always a nice way to say congratulations to how fantastic they were. But I always thought there could have been a little bit more from Thomas Rosicky, but through no fault of his own. So I can totally understand why you've gone for Thomas Rosicky. And I remember an absolute screamer he scored. I think it was Sparta Prague or one of the first goals. What a goal that was. Unbelievable. And I remember one of the best team goals I've seen at the Emirates, other than the Norwich goal that Jack Wilshere scored, was the Sunderland goal that Thomas Rosicky scored, that he kind of was massively fantastic, absolutely superb. And he was always involved in everything that was tricky and great to watch in that Emirates era. So great shout, mate. My number 4 is none other than Martin Keown. Now, Martin Keown, I think, sometimes gets overlooked in centre halves because we talk about Tony Adams and Steve Bold with Dixon and Winterburn. We never talk about Martin Keown. Then we had Sol Campbell. Martin Keown was still there. Kolo Toure was there. We didn't really mention Martin Keown. This guy is the mentality that I loved about him, right? He could defend, he could play, but this mentality was unbelievable. That picture right there and that moment right there, I loved. Now, people can sit there and say, I don't like stuff like that. Guendouzi did it against Brighton and he got to go. I don't give a damn, man. I love this sort of stuff. This is what I want to see, right? Look at that. That picture there screaming in Van Nistelrooy's face. Tell me another fan at the time that was supporting Arsenal that didn't love that, because you won't find one. It was superb, mate. This is what I want to see right now. Leadership, quality, giving a damn, 110%, playing for the shirt, understanding what it's like to wear the badge, knowing what it's like to be a part of the Arsenal. And Martin Keown just got it, mate. And I don't know what your thoughts are on Martin Keown as a footballer, but also in terms of being classed as underrated. It would be interesting for me to know what your thoughts are, Tom.
Yeah, look, Keown for me was always in a way, he was a bit of one of those forgotten invincibles. People kind of, sometimes you think of Calatora and you think of Sol Campbell, but Keown was in that team and he played his part and was so crucial to Arsenal leading up to the Invincibles season as well. And you think about what leaders are in dressing rooms, and you think about the impact of players that aren't necessarily getting all the minutes all the time, especially towards the latter stages of his career. But he was so crucial in the dressing room for that team. And I remember watching the Invincible documentary and listening to Keown talk about that, where he would just like grab the team by the scruff of the neck at halftime and say, you need to buck your ideas up, lads, because, we're going to lose this, and we're going to lose this record, and we're going to lose this accolade of being Invincibles. And he just had the ultimate mentality. He's also one of the very few ex-Arsenal players I enjoy listening to after their careers finish. And, I think he's an underrated pundit, not just an underrated player. And I do like listening to Martin Keown. He's not always right. And, you're hard-pressed to find a pundit who is always right. But I do like Martin Keown's words on football. I think he understands the game really, really well. Yes, there's the edge of the old school to him, and he's never going to lose that. But I think he's one of those old school players that still has their, has managed to evolve with the times. They still remain kind of a relevant pundit in today's media too. And I have a real appreciation for ex-players that can do that of his age. So as a player and as a pundit afterwards, yeah, I would say absolutely underrated.
Fair play. One of my favourite chants at Highbury years ago must have been 2002, I imagine, when we done the double. And Everton, we always used to play Everton, didn't we? The last game of the season, 98, we smashed them. 2002, we also did. And it was always loads of goals in it. I think it was 4-3. And I remember them singing, Keown has got a monkey's head, Keown has got a monkey's head, all the Everton fans. And it was quite quiet, obviously, over in the clock end area in the away section. And I remember it getting louder and louder. And then towards the end, all the Arsenal fans started singing, Keown has won a championship. And it just absolutely drowned them out. It was just class. And it always has stayed with me. Absolutely love Martin Keown. And as you say, somebody who's still in the game that I like listening to also. Number 3 for me was obviously Olivier Giroud. So we won't go there. Tom, who have you gone for as your third? Number 3.
Yeah, my number 3 pick is Nigel Winterburn, who gets into this list because, again, we were having a bit of a chat about Lauren as well off air, who I don't think I'm right in saying has made either of our lists in the end. But
but he's one that we both discussed, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He, like Lauren, I think is one of those players that played in great teams, but didn't ever necessarily get the credit for kind of his role in those sides. And especially in a left-back position that's dominated by conversations of Kenny Sansom and, of course, Ashley Cole, and fingers crossed more recently, Kieran Tierney one day as well. Nigel Winterburn sometimes goes missing in these discussions. And I think that's why you can talk about him being underrated. He didn't score many goals, but I tell you what, he scored a couple of crackers for Arsenal when he did score them. And one with his right foot, I remember during the 88-89 season, that was an amazing strike, which was important because we were 1-0 up. I think it was am I right in saying I think it might have been the Wimbledon? No, it wasn't the Wimbledon game, was it? Towards the end of that season, there was only a few games.
It was
left.
Wimbledon. It was Wimbledon.
Was it Wimbledon?
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was Wimbledon.
And he scores a cracker with his right foot, and we go off and we then lose. I think it was McGee. that got the winner in the or the equaliser in that fixture. That's a great picture.
I love this photo. I love this photo.
That's amazing, isn't it? Oh dear. But yeah, and he just every part of Nigel Winterburn's essence was Arsenal. Like, he just lived and breathed the club, and we kind of, we brought him in as a player that wasn't necessarily going to take Arsenal to the next level, but he just nailed down that left back slot and just made it his own, and never gave it up until it was time for him to move on. And that's something that's really difficult to do for the amount of years that he did it. And absolute respect, and another player I think that just doesn't get the credit that he deserves from being an Arsenal player.
Yeah, I think it's a great shout. And I remember the screamer he scored to make it 3-2 against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. And I think it was 97-98 season. Absolute quality goal. I do think as Nigel Winterburn, and this is another funny story about the Di Canio sending off at Sheffield Wednesday where he pushed the ref, and then Nigel Winterburn goes running after him and then does that sort of scared look where he thinks, oh my God, Di Canio is going to knock me out. But I must admit, I think what George Graham did there was sensational with that back four, and Nigel Winterburn was a part of it. And to get him from Wimbledon, I mean, the picture we saw there at Wimbledon with his hair, I mean, wow, it doesn't even look like him, does it? But what a signing. What an absolutely fantastic signing. Dixon and Spold from Stoke, Adams through the ranks, and then, of course, Nigel Winterburn from Wimbledon. And it turned out to be, with David Seaman, the best back five we've seen probably at Arsenal and in Europe for a long, long time. So I think it's a great shout. And the reason I think that Nigel Winterburn perhaps doesn't get the credit is similar to when I picked Carnu and said that Bergkamp and Henry were ahead of him. Everyone thinks of Ashley Cole as a left back. Everyone thinks of, Kenny Sansom. And sometimes Nigel Winterburn gets overlooked because of those, just how good they were. And sometimes when you're in that caliber and you played at that similar position, you kind of get overlooked. So I think it's a fair one, mate. Let's go we're going to our final two now, aren't we? Okay, I'll go. This player is so underrated, in my opinion. And a player that I felt should have done more for country, but wasn't really given the chance. And a certain couple of World Cups that I just thought he's got to get picked now. Not to play, but to go into the squad. I thought this guy could play anywhere on the pitch and was somebody who gave 110% and was a quality character. And everyone you talk about absolutely loves him. Number 2 is Ray Parlour for me. I thought Ray Parlour deserved to play a lot more for England, but obviously David Beckham was there, and I get why he's not going to start, Tom. But do you think maybe Ray Parlour deserved a few more England caps?
Again, you raise the point of Ray Parlour at a time where the England squad it wasn't exactly lacking in talent during his time that he played. And the thing about Ray was that, again, he's one of those absolutely integral dressing room characters. And so you don't just underrate what he brought to the team in terms of, what he was capable of doing. And, not only just where he played, but his versatility in his game as well. But what he brought to the dressing room, the culture that was instilled, the Tuesday club kind of atmosphere around Ray Parlour. And, we talk about Mr. Arsenal being Tony Adams, of course, but if there was anyone else that would get that tagline, the next in line to Tony Adams would have been Ray Parlour for me. And, when you see the pictures of him alongside players like Thierry Henry, it doesn't look right, does it? Like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't look right. Like, you wouldn't expect it to be standing there, but that he could mix it amongst those guys. And when he was on the pitch, he wasn't out of place. The goal in the FA Cup against Chelsea was, what a strike that was. And of all the people to stand up and score that, to be Ray Parlour, it cemented his place. And he'll go down as an Arsenal legend, both pre and post playing career.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's only Ray Parlour and he's stuck in the top corner. I'll never forget that from Tim Lovejoy. It was absolute classic. And I do think with Ray Parlour that he was a player that could have gone either wing and definitely in the middle. And I think when Arsene Wenger came to Arsenal, he just completely raised his game. And he always said, didn't he, that both Arsene Wenger and Dennis Bergkamp made him a better player. But I think sometimes you have to look at the qualities that he did bring. And I think that when, particularly in the Invincible season, we lost Patrick Vieira. We had Edu, we had Parlour. He came in and he did his job. And in 2002 as well, he had some man of the match performances. I remember him scoring a hat trick against Newcastle. I remember him being brilliant at Old Trafford. And I think he might have even got man of the match for that day. I'm sure it was him and Vieira in the middle. I might have been wrong, but he was absolutely superb. And I do sometimes think that we overlook him, like you say. I know it sounds silly and it sounds actually quite horrible, but when you look at Lundberg and Pires and Henry, you think, you look at Ray Parlour and some people think, oh yeah, he done a job. Actually, he did more than a hell of a job. I thought he was very, very underrated. And
Mm.
a lot of people at the time, I remember going to the games with my mate's granddad, and he used to say, "Oh, I don't want Ray Parlour in the team. Freddie Ljungberg's better, and Robert Pires is better." And you know what? Yes, he's probably right. And David Beckham was better for England, but I don't think you can underestimate just what a job that he did. And I don't really remember Ray Parlour having many bad games for Arsenal. I don't remember him leaving the pitch thinking, what the hell was that? Like, get him off. He's had a shocker. I felt like he always give 110%, and that's why he walks into this most underrated in the top 5, and he's number 2 for me. So that's why I've gone for Ray Parlour, Tom. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, my number 2 is Nacho Monreal, who is probably one that
You love a left back, mate. You love a left back.
I love a left back. You can't not love a left back. That's what I'd say. We signed him from Malaga, and he played the day after he signed. And he never really looked back. He was competing with Kieran Gibbs for that left back spot, and he outlasted him. He won that battle. We moved forwards, and he was up against Sead Kolasinac, and despite leaving the club before Kolasinac, in my view, he won that battle as well. He was consistent. When you're a kid and you're playing football, like 11-a-side as a kid, and there's always like your most improved player awards at the end of the season. I always felt like he was the player that would win that every year. But he got really big goals. I remember the goal at Old Trafford he scored. When Danny Welbeck scored in that game.
Yes.
The goal he scored against Manchester City in another FA Cup semi-final. Like, without Monreal, we don't end our trophy drought. It's as simple as that. He was so important to the teams that he played in, and in my view, one of the most consistent performers that you would see in an Arsenal shirt. You couldn't ever say that he was a lambasting, attacking left back that would ping loads of crosses into the box or score loads of goals, and he wasn't necessarily even like the most defensive minded of left backs either. He was just very, very decent, and I think he was very, very consistent for Arsenal. And whenever there was like a loss, you would never pick out Nacho Monreal for like criticism in losses. He would always put 110% effort in, and was an absolute asset to the team.
I think it's a great pick. Someone who showed some leadership qualities as well, and some attributes on the pitch that I liked mentality-wise. I always think he was Mr. Consistent. He was always a 7 out of 10. When he came from Malaga, I didn't quite like him. I thought he was a bit of a weak link. I think it took him a bit of time, if I'm honest with you. We had Santi Cazorla at the time, and obviously he said, look, come to Arsenal. And I thought, who is this guy? Like, why have we got him? I really don't get it. One thing I will say, he was so much better than that donkey Kolasinac. I mean, I know it's not hard, but this guy is the worst left back I've ever seen, that Kolasinac. I'm so glad that he's now gone. And when we were signed Kieran Tierney, I thought, at least Kolasinac can go. We can keep Monreal and Tierney. And we got rid of Monreal. I thought, oh, come on, we can't get rid of him. We had to get rid of the other lad, but obviously he was on a lot more money. But Nacho Monreal for me was a really underrated player, and I think it's a fair choice. The other thing that I liked about Nacho Monreal was that he rarely moaned. And I know that sounds a weird thing to say, but he really moaned when he would get dropped for Gibbs, let's say, or when he would have to play at times centre back. I remember him going into a back 3. I remember at times he went into a back 4. One of the times against Hull, he was outstanding at the Emirates, playing in a back in a centre back position. Never moaned, just got on with his job. And I think that sometimes people underestimate how important that is, because you play for the shirt. And I thought it was a great pick. When I saw you go for him, I thought, a bit like you did with some of mine, I thought, oh Christ, I've forgotten about Nacho Monreal. Because that is a great shout, Tom. And I do feel like, I think I might, if I'm right, you're the La Liga expert. I'm not. He's still playing for Sociedad. Is that right, or is he gone now?
I'm pretty sure he is still playing for Sociedad. I said my watching of Sociedad, of La Liga, has gone down significantly in the last year. But yeah, he is still there. He went back, and I think he scored in the first season that he returned as well. I think he scored more goals than Kolasinac did after he left. So there's a funny little quip there.
Mate, let's not bring him up again. Jesus. Great shout.
My number 1 is Sead Kolasinac.
Can you imagine? I am being told he is still there. So fair play, Nacho. He must be in his late 30s now, but obviously still at the top level. So it's a great shout, Tom. I can't say. We'll stick with you for your last one. We'll go to our number 1s now. Who have you gone for as Arsenal's most underrated player ever?
My number 1 most underrated Arsenal player ever is Liam Brady, which may come across as a bit of a surprise to a lot of people that I've picked Liam Brady. And the reason why I've picked him is because whenever anyone does a list not anyone, maybe that's too harsh, but I'd say 90% of compilations that you see of the greatest Arsenal players ever, how many times Liam Brady is just skipped over and missed and not discussed? Because, the 70s weren't a great time for Arsenal. And Liam Brady didn't really win many honours at Arsenal. I think he won, an FA Cup in 79, and we obviously got to the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup final. But that was it. That was what he won for Arsenal. He's not the most decorated Arsenal player, but he is still absolutely one of the greatest players that this club has ever had. And all you need to do is go back and watch the environment in which Liam Brady played in. You look at the pitches that he played on, and then you watch how good he is with the ball at his feet, and what he could do with the ball at his feet was just magical. And as I say, I was never alive to watch him play in the flesh, unfortunately. But as I said off air to you, Dan, I feel like it is a responsibility of Arsenal fans to, go back, learn your history, go back and see some of the best players, why you support the club you do, and where it's got to, where it has with the history that it has. And that you can't look back without seeing how good Liam Brady was. And, I could wax lyrical about him for a long, long time, but I pick him for this list. It might seem weird to people, but I just don't think he gets the credit when people are talking about the greatest Arsenal players of all time. And I just think he absolutely deserves to be on those lists. And that's why I think he's underrated.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, Tom, because I spoke to Lee Judges, speak to Kev Campbell, even Sophie. I think Sophie ended up putting him at number 5 on greatest ever players ever, just because of how good that he was. And I don't remember, I was never going to remember watching him live, but I certainly watched the 79 FA Cup. And my God, head and shoulders above anybody else on the pitch out of all 22 players. This guy was exceptional. And people like Lee Judges and Gunnar Hilsey, Trev, they all just put him straight into the 1 to 11. Yeah, Vieira and Brady, straight away, no question. Yeah. Nobody else gets close. And I would have loved to have seen him live. And I think that he would have been absolute joy to what he would have been like. Everyone loves Saka at the moment. He would have been that guy, wouldn't he? He would have been the one that everyone's looking at and everyone's talking about. He would have been the Henry, the Bergkamp, the Vieira. So I think it's fair for you to put him in there. And some people might think he was great. Everyone loved him. A little bit like Kanu, I suppose. Everyone loved him. But I think you're right. Liam Brady was that level. And I don't think sometimes he gets put into that level by others. And I think that is just a generational thing, if I'm honest with you. I think it is purely generational. So fair play. Right, we're down to it. The last for me. I think this is probably one of the easiest picks for me. I think hands down, the number 1 most underrated Arsenal player ever is none other than Gilberto Silva. Now, when you look at a footballer or when you look at a football game, you sometimes don't see what players do, right? And I think most Arsenal fans or most football fans look at players like Rodri at Man City, Sergio Busquets. At some point in time, they probably looked at others that will come into play over the last decades or last 20 years of football, and they'll think, what did they really do then? If you watch Sergio Busquets, Gilberto Silva, you will understand how to play a game of football. They were so important and integral to the way that we played football. And I know that he had Vieira as a partner, and it's probably one of the best partners you're ever going to want in centre midfield next to you. But when we had Gilberto Silva out, we didn't replace him, Tom. We just did not. And as much as I've bigged up Parlour and I've bigged up Edu, who I liked, I honestly believe, personally, this guy was one of the most important players that we had. And I don't think you can underestimate not the quality of him, but his attitude, his mentality, his winning mentality, and his leadership. The guy could step up at 12 yards and put it in a penalty, trust me as well. But he had the armband and never really complained. When we moved to the Emirates, I don't think he really got treated that well, if I'm honest with you. Not by the fans, but by the coaching staff and by the manager, because I think that they were moving on with the Fabregases and Flaminis of this world, and Diaby and Denilson were coming through. And I remember thinking, this guy's still one of our best players, though. And I know that the time comes where you have to move on, and I get that. I understand that. But I don't think we appreciated what we had until it was gone. And the amount of times, as I said, Tom, that he was missing, and you thought, what's happening in the middle there? We're missing him. We're missing Gilberto Silva. I thought the guy was exceptional. I really liked it. I thought it was an unbelievable signing. And do you know the funniest story about Gilberto Silva and how we signed him? I don't even know if you know this, but you probably
I
do.
might not.
In 2002, Brazil, Emerson was picked, right? Emerson was dicking around in goal and he got injured. And I think he might have even broken his arm. So Gilberto Silva got called up to the Brazil squad and Arsenal signed him. If Emerson wouldn't have been in goal that day, mucking around in training, we might not have even signed Gilberto Silva. So for me, that was just fate. He had to come to the club. I thought he was an exceptional talent. He first come to the club and I thought Brazilian, this is going to be interesting. Some of his passing at times I thought went a little bit astray and people used to think, oh God, come on, Brazilian. Sometimes it doesn't always work like that. They're not all Ronaldinho. But what I think he did was have completely different attributes and ones that I think complemented Patrick Vieira. I think, listen, he wasn't the reason Patrick Vieira was great at Arsenal, of course not, but certainly a partnership that I think was one of the best we've seen. Gilberto Silva, for me, most underrated player. Tom, your thoughts?
Yeah, my funny facts about Gilberto Silva. I think he's the first goal scorer at the Emirates in a competitive game. I think he scored in that draw with Aston Villa. Olaf Melberg, I think, got the other goal that day.
That's right.
Gilberto was. I'm annoyed. You know, when we talked about this list, and I said I was going to people are going to slip out my memory, and you're right to put him at your number one because he slips out of people's memories so easily, just like mine. Because he would absolutely be on my list had I really sat down and had a fair few hours to think about it. He was definitely have been up there and probably near the top as well. So I'm glad that you picked him, and I'm glad that we get the chance to talk about him. He was one of the first people I ever got on the back of an Arsenal shirt.
Oh wow!
I didn't really buy too many Arsenal shirts when I was a kid. The first one I had was the Champions League's final season with the Thierry Henry yellow kit, we got to final with, and then the next kit was it's a couple of years later at the Emirates, and it was the burgundy and black hooped shirt. Do you remember that? It was like a third kit. Eduardo signed that season. And I remember I went to, I think it was JJB Sports, which isn't around anymore. And yeah, they didn't have any V's or F's. So you couldn't get Van Persie and you couldn't get Fabregas. So I was like, I'll have Gilberto Silva, please, on the back of my shirt. And yeah, I've still got that shirt to this day. It's a great shirt. And he is a great player. Not very Brazilian, as you say, but absolutely one of the most underrated players of a generation. And without him, there's no way that we would have gone invincible. So great pick.
There we go. So Tom, Liam Brady or Gilberto Silva? Who are you going for if you had to pick
Liam
one?
Brady, mate, all day long.
He's still sticking with it. Still sticking with it. I like it.
Yeah.
Back in your man. And you know what? It's a great pick. It is a great pick. And I think all of them. And listen, we could do top 10s if we had time because you could. There's so many that we missed out. We talked about Lauren, both of us talking about him. Kevin Richardson, I was thinking of in the '89 season. He was so underrated.
Yeah.
And what a signing that was. And of course, we've mentioned each other's players and thinking, oh, okay, Lee Dixon is another one that I think could have been mentioned. Steve Bold, another one that could have been mentioned. I think
Per Mertesacker as well is someone that arguably could have been mentioned. I mean, he was great in 2 FA Cup finals. Was massive for us in those two against Chelsea. And you look at what he's now gone on to do, which is become head of the academy, and what the work that's going on there and the great talent we got coming through. Like, yeah, he definitely deserves a mention. I was thinking about Eduardo, who I brought up, as well as possibly another one, and what he could have gone on to achieve had he not got that horrific injury.
One of the best finishes I've ever seen. Unreal.
Yeah. So look, I think there are a lot of players that we probably haven't mentioned that we could give a shout out to. But
100%. Sylvain Wiltord is another one, of course. The Old Trafford, mate. It's because of him, isn't it? So that's another great shout.
Kleb's another one that.
I liked Kleb. I liked Alexander Kleb a lot. I thought he was a very talented boy, and there's so many, mate. There's so many. But I've really enjoyed this, man. Listen, the last few minutes we always do a get off the Pottsy. So what I normally do is pick somebody or a group of people to tell them to get off the Pottsy, which we all know what that means. And I'm going to actually pick the Arsenal fan base this time, right? And it isn't to be negative and start digging them out and start having a fight with them all, but it's just ask the question, should we raise the standards of this football club, Tom Canton? And the reason I ask you this is because there's a lot of debate this season about whether top 4 would be a great season or whether top 4 would be, no, we don't, doesn't matter if we don't get it, top 6 will be good enough. As long as we come 7th, it means we're better than 8th from last season. There's a lot of debate about where Arsenal should finish this season. Now, I believe we should be raising the standards of this football club, and I think that where we want it to be, in my opinion, as an Arsenal fan, and I hope everyone agrees, is we want to be at top where Man City and Liverpool are. That's where our aim should be. Our aim should never be to try and be, let's just make sure we finish behind Chelsea, Liverpool and City. I think we should be aiming much higher. Now, at the same time, Tom, I'm realistic to know that we're not going to win the league this season or probably next season. But I feel like we need to be looking at the situation right now in this league table, forgetting if we're winning or losing at the moment and saying top 4 is 100% on. And I'm looking at Chelsea right now. I'm not looking at what West Ham and Wolves are doing. I'm looking at what Chelsea are doing. So I'm kind of asking the fan base to raise the standards of the football club. Do you think that I'm a little bit harsh when I ask that question, Tom? Or are you of the opinion that we should be?
There's nothing harsh about asking the expectation to be to get Arsenal Football Club back to winning titles. I can't sit and here and criticise that point of view because it's you can't criticise someone's want to see Arsenal back to the top. My issue sometimes with it is that I think the realism and the realistic kind of nature of what that entails sometimes gets a bit blurred. In my mind, we're moving in the right direction. In my mind, things are being done, decisions are being made to get us there. And I just don't think that Arsenal, as a title challenger, happens in a short space of time because of the mistakes that have been made in the past, because of the reluctantness of spending in the past. But I think that there are decisions being made that I look upon favourably. I love the ruthlessness that's surrounding the team at the moment. I love the way in which we're only wanting players in the squad and in the team that are going to push us in the right direction, that are going to buy into what we're trying to do. But I can't ever sit and criticise someone who says they want Arsenal to be back winning titles. The criticism I have is sometimes maybe where the context isn't applied maybe as accurately as it could be. But to ask Arsenal to be back to the top again and to have standards which are, if we're not looking like we're progressing towards being title challengers again, that we should probably change something. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, mate, at all.
Fair play. That picture just there brings me nicely to a close, because one thing I do want to say, although I might be calling out the fan base to ask the question to raise the standards of the football club, I cannot remember a season, home and away, where the fan base has been this good. I'm honestly being serious. I remember when we were winning titles in 2004. I remember getting to Champions League finals in 2006. I remember the situation of Leicester winning the league where we thought we might have been close. And I remember in 2008 where Eduardo broke his leg. We all thought that season we were going to win the league. But I do not remember, Tom, a season like this where home and away, the Arsenal fan base has made me feel so proud to be a part of it. And whether I'm watching home on TV because I haven't got an away ticket, or whether I've been there, and I've been home and away to every game this season other than 3 games, and it has been nothing short of fantastic, mate. The atmosphere has been sensational. I remember seeing 4 or 5 occasions this season where we've waited right until nobody else left in that stadium because we're buzzing still. And I think that has got to be down to a couple of things. The way that we've been playing of late, the fact that we think we've got a little bit of connect back with some of the players and the telepathy of what the manager's done in terms of the recruitment and got the right clear out needed from the removing of some of the culture. And also, I do think COVID's played a part, mate, in the fact that we haven't been able to get into that ground for pretty much the best part of 2 years throughout a pandemic. So all of that coming into the mix and the culmination of all those elements, I think has now made it even more of a pleasure going to the football games. And I do have to big up the fan base for that, Tom. So I want to get that in. Have you noticed any difference in the last few games you've been to?
Yeah, I mean, the last game I went to before yesterday was the Aston Villa game, and I thought the atmosphere at that game was great as well. But I hadn't been since that point where we'd hit our strides. I mean, we've only lost 2 games in the league since I think when we lost to Everton. Since that point, we've only lost to City and Liverpool. Nothing to be ashamed about that at all, especially when we played as well as we did in those 2 games. So what I saw yesterday and what I experienced as soon as you got into the ground, there was a buzz. There's this kind of energy, and then there's this belief that there is, and there's no longer a divide. Really, I think that a lot of the divide that we see, Dan, sometimes is a lot of it's online. And I think that the majority, nearly all, I'd say arguably 90+% of the home attending crowd are 100% behind what this club is trying to do at the moment. And I think that there is a lot of discussions that happen in the pubs and afterwards as well about whether or not certain decisions are right or not. But I think that there is an understanding that, you know, this is so much better than what has been and what has come before in the last half decade to full decade, that we are finally trying to move in the right direction, and that decisions are being made that we've wanted and we've needed sort of accountability and stuff like that for such a long time. And, you know, investment as well. You know, we've seen £200 million invested. I use that in quotation marks, invested, with kind of the refinancing of loans and stuff. But we've spent money. We've spent more than anyone else last summer. A lot of that was to right a lot of the wrongs of previous spending of former regimes. But, you know, we're moving in a really, really strong direction now. And I can't wait to see where we finish. And if it is in the Champions League places, it's going to be an exciting summer and hopefully an even more tantalising season to follow.
Yeah, I can't disagree, mate. Absolutely, it has been. Tom, I want to say a huge thank you, man. Just quickly, how can people follow you and your content, mate?
Yeah, you can find me at the Gooner Talk TV on Twitter, just the Gooner Talk on YouTube, or myself at Tom Canton Media. A lot of my written work is over at football.london, and you can find me on the Arsenal Way for video stuff over there as well. So you're not short of my face, that's for sure. But no, thanks for having me, Dan. I always appreciate it.
Mate, always a pleasure talking to you, man. Proper Gooner. I love your content as well. Get yourself over to the Gooner Talk TV. Subscribe and like to the videos of Tom. Every 8:30 in the morning, you'll see Tom's face talking Arsenal, talking transfers, talking tactics, and talking what we love best, the Arsenal Football Club. Thank you all, squaddies, for joining us tonight. It's been fantastic to see you all in the chat. We will see you next time for another Get Off the Pottsy. But of course, before then, you'll see Kev and Soph on the Highbury Squad. This has been a pleasure. This has been Get Off the Pottsy. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, and good night. Take care.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.